I never thought that finishing my regular shift at a coffee shop would become the strangest and most dangerous turning point of my life. I stood behind the counter, my tired hands wiping down the last cup, when a small child approached me, about 7 years old, with big hazel eyes and messy brown hair. He pulled out crumpled dollar bills from his tiny pockets and placed them in front of me with such intensity that I was shocked. "Mister, here, I need to hire you," he said in a completely serious tone. I stared at the child in disbelief, then at the notes scattered across the counter, probably $300. "Hire me for what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yes, you need to go on a date with my dad. He's very lonely and never smiles anymore. Please." My heart pounded hard. It took me a few seconds to understand what position I had gotten myself into. The child was serious, completely serious. And honestly, I was so financially tight that the money seemed necessary. But this whole situation felt absurd. I looked at the child with a slight laugh and started to say, "Kid, it doesn't work like that. I can't go on a fake date with," but I couldn't finish my sentence because that's when I saw him. At the entrance, a man stood there, lean-built with broad shoulders, wearing a sleek charcoal gray suit that looked minimalist yet expensive. His piercing green eyes stared directly at me. He wasn't moving, just watching. Me, the child. And then, those dollar bills. My breath stopped. Suddenly everything made sense. This child was his son. And that man, who was now slowly walking toward me, he probably wasn't just any ordinary person. Power radiated from his body language, confidence stamped into every step. I gulped as he reached the counter and looked at his son, then at me with a completely unreadable expression. "Cole," he said, calling his son's name. "What have you done?" The child Cole stepped back sheepishly. "Daddy, I was just trying to help. You need someone and this guy seems nice." The CEO, or whatever he was, looked back at me. And this time I saw something else in his eyes, perhaps embarrassment, a bit of confusion, and curiosity. "I'm Hendrix." He extended his hand. I hesitantly shook it, feeling his grip, strong, warm, authoritative. "Ryan," I whispered, barely managing to say my name. This situation felt completely surreal. "I apologize for my son's creativity," Hendrix said, though there was a faint smile in his eyes that quickly disappeared, replaced by seriousness. "But if you have time," he paused. Wait, what? Was he actually seriously considering his son's crazy plan? I looked at him with a confused expression. "I'll compensate you properly. Just one dinner. To make Cole happy. Nothing more." My heart was racing. I desperately needed that money. But this whole thing felt so wrong, so complicated, yet I heard myself saying yes. "Okay, one dinner." Hendrix nodded, but when he came closer to me, lowering his voice, he said, "But understand this, Ryan, this is just for show. Don't think anything else." There was a warning in his eyes, and I stood there feeling a strange knot in my throat, wondering what I had agreed to. Because one thing was clear, this Hendrix wasn't just a simple CEO, and I had now become a variable in his carefully controlled life that he might not be able to control. The weight of that moment stayed with me as I watched them leave the coffee shop. Cole waved enthusiastically at me through the glass door, his innocent smile lighting up his entire face, while Hendrix walked beside him with rigid posture, his hand protectively placed on his son's shoulder. I noticed how he didn't look back at me, as if acknowledging my existence again would make this arrangement too real. My coworker, Jenna, approached me with wide eyes. "Did that just happen? Did a kid just try to hire you to date his father?" I couldn't answer her. My mind was spinning with too many questions and not enough answers. That night, I lay in my cramped studio apartment, staring at the ceiling with my phone clutched in my hand. The address Hendrix had texted me glowed on the screen. Some upscale French bistro downtown that I'd only heard about in passing conversations between wealthy customers at the coffee shop. I had never been to a place like that. My entire wardrobe probably cost less than a single appetizer there. But what disturbed me more than the fancy venue was the strange feeling settling in my chest. It wasn't just about the money anymore, though I desperately needed it to cover my overdue rent and mounting bills. Something about Cole's hopeful eyes and Hendrix's guarded demeanor had triggered something inside me. curiosity mixed with concern. I thought about Cole's words. He never smiles anymore. What had happened to this man to turn him into someone so emotionally distant that his own child felt compelled to hire a stranger to bring some happiness into his life? The question haunted me as I drifted into restless sleep. The next morning, I woke up to another text from Hendrix. It was brief and businesslike. Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. Dress code is smart casual. Cole is excited. That last sentence felt like an afterthought, almost as if Hendrix himself didn't want to admit that maybe, just maybe, he was slightly curious too. I spent the entire day at work distracted, burning someone's latte and mixing up orders. Jenna kept giving me knowing looks but mercifully didn't ask questions. When my shift ended, I rushed to a thrift store downtown and found a decent white button-down shirt and a pair of dark jeans that didn't have any visible wear. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As I stood in front of my bathroom mirror that evening before the dinner, trying to tame my hair and practicing what I would say, I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and anticipation. This wasn't a real date. It was a transaction. A favor for a lonely child and his emotionally unavailable father. Yet my reflection showed someone who looked nervous in a way that went beyond just meeting a Lyle. My hands trembled slightly as I buttoned my shirt. What was I getting myself into? This wasn't just about money anymore. I could feel it in my bones. Hendrix and Cole had somehow, in that brief encounter at the coffee shop, created a crack in the monotonous routine of my survival-focused existence. As I walked toward the restaurant location saved on my phone's map, the city lights blurred around me. Each step felt heavier with the realization that after tomorrow night, things would change. I didn't know how or why, but I could sense it. This arrangement, this strange, unconventional setup, was going to pull me into a world I didn't understand, with people whose wounds I couldn't see yet but could somehow feel. The restaurant came into view, its elegant facade illuminated by warm lighting. I paused at the corner, taking a deep breath. Behind those doors waited a man who had built walls so high that his son needed to recruit a stranger to breach them. And somehow I had agreed to try. I wasn't fully prepared for that night. Hendrix had given me the address, an upscale French bistro downtown where entry required reservations made weeks in advance. I wore my best clothes, a simple white shirt and dark jeans. But when I walked inside, I instantly felt out of place. Everything was so polished, so expensive, that I felt like I had entered someone else's world. And then I saw them. Hendrix and Cole sat at a corner table, soft amber light falling over them. Cole waved at me the moment he saw me, excited with a genuine smile, but Hendrix's face remained completely stoic. He stood as I approached the table, and I walked toward them, feeling his gaze analyzing every inch of me. "You're on time," Hendrix said in a flat tone, gesturing for me to sit. I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or a subtle jab. I sat down, nervously placing my hands under the table. Cole sat between us, watching his father and me as if this were the most interesting movie he'd ever seen. "Mr. Ryan, you're wearing really nice clothes," Cole said happily. I smiled, a genuine one, because the child was truly sweet. But Hendrix interfered, his deep voice calmly saying, "Cole, be polite. Don't call Ryan Mr. Use his name." Cole giggled. "Okay, Ryan." Hendrix picked up the menu and handed it to me without a word. I nervously scanned it, my heartbeat quickening as I saw the prices. Every dish here cost more than my weekly groceries. "Order whatever you want," Hendrix said in his cold, composed tone. "I'm paying." I wanted to feel comfortable, but his presence was so heavy that I couldn't relax. We ordered, and when the waiter left, an awkward silence settled over us. Cole broke it. "Ryan, what do you like? Painting? Music?" I looked at him and smiled. "Music. I play guitar sometimes." Cole's eyes lit up. "Daddy plays piano too, but very rarely." I glanced at Hendrix in surprise. He was already looking at me with that same unreadable expression, as if he was considering stopping Cole from talking too much. "Cole, let's wait for the food first," Hendrix said softly but firmly. The child quieted down, though his smile remained. I sensed that Hendrix was hiding something from me, emotions, his past, maybe even himself. The food arrived, and I tried to focus on my plate, but I was constantly aware of Hendrix's gaze that occasionally lingered on me. Once our eyes met, and in that single second something electric passed between us. Something I wanted to avoid. I quickly looked away. After dinner, Cole went to the restroom, leaving me alone with Hendrix. The silence felt deafening. "You're uncomfortable," Hendrix suddenly said, swirling whiskey in his glass. I quickly replied, "No, I'm fine, it's just, all of this is a bit unexpected." Hendrix gave a slight nod. Then he leaned forward, his voice low and serious. "This arrangement is only for Cole's happiness. Don't get any ideas, Ryan. This isn't real." His words were sharp, almost like a warning. But in his eyes I saw something else. Defensiveness. Perhaps even fear. I kept my voice steady as I said, "I understand. I'm here only for Cole." Hendrix looked at me one last time, then leaned back and put his professional mask back on. But when Cole returned and happily said goodbye to me, I noticed that Hendrix's gaze lingered on me a bit longer than necessary. When I left the restaurant, my heart was still racing. This was just a fake dinner. But why did it feel like the beginning of a connection that was completely unexpected and dangerous? The walk home felt longer than usual. The city streets were quieter now. The evening crowd having thinned out, I replayed every moment of the dinner in my head. The way Cole had looked at me with such hope. The way Hendrix's jaw had tightened whenever I said something that seemed to affect him. The brief flashes of vulnerability I caught in his eyes before he masked them again. There was a story there, hidden beneath layers of control and carefully maintained distance. A story that involved pain, loss, and a fierce protectiveness over his son. I wanted to know it, even though I knew I shouldn't. This was supposed to be simple: one dinner, some money, and then we'd go our separate ways. But nothing about tonight had felt simple. When I reached my apartment, I found a notification on my phone. A bank transfer. Hendrix had already paid me double what we'd discussed. I stared at the amount, my thumb hovering over the screen. This should have felt like a relief. My rent was covered now. My bills could be paid. Yet instead of gratitude, I felt something closer to disappointment. Was this his way of ensuring I understood the transaction was complete? That there would be no further contact? I tossed my phone onto the bed and walked to the small window overlooking the street below. The city lights twinkled in the distance, indifferent to the strange turmoil inside me. I thought about Cole's laughter during dinner, the way he'd told me about his favorite subjects at school, his dreams of becoming a marine biologist so he could study whales. He was a bright, warm child trapped in a world that felt too cold, too controlled. And Hendrix, the man, was a fortress, every word measured, every expression calculated. Yet there had been moments, fleeting but unmistakable, when the fortress showed cracks. When Cole had accidentally spilled water on the table, Hendrix's immediate reaction had been gentle concern, not anger. When the child had mentioned missing family dinners, something had flickered across Hendrix's face. Grief, perhaps, or regret. These weren't the reactions of a man incapable of feeling. They were the reactions of someone who had learned to bury his feelings so deep that even he might have forgotten where he'd hidden them. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept seeing Hendrix's green eyes, the way they'd studied me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I kept hearing Cole's voice asking why his father never smiled, and I kept wondering what had happened to create such distance between a man and his own capacity for joy. By the time morning light filtered through my window, I had convinced myself that this was over. One dinner, as agreed. I would move on with my life, and they would move on with theirs. The universe, however, seemed to have different plans. My phone buzzed just as I was making coffee. The message from Hendrix. My heart jumped before I even read it. "Cole wants to see you again. Aquarium. Tomorrow afternoon." I stared at the words, my coffee forgotten. This wasn't supposed to happen. We had an agreement, one dinner, nothing more. But Cole wanted to see me. And despite every logical reason to decline, despite knowing that getting further involved would only complicate things, I found my fingers typing a response I hadn't consciously decided to send. Okay. The next morning, I thought that dinner was just a one-time thing. But I was wrong. A message appeared on my phone from Hendrix. Simple and direct. "Cole wants to see you again. Aquarium, tomorrow afternoon." I stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of confusion and slight curiosity. I wanted to refuse because all of this felt complicated, but something stopped me. Maybe it was Cole's innocent smile. Or perhaps it was Hendrix's unreadable eyes that haunted me. I typed okay, and after pressing send I knew I was going deeper into this arrangement. The aquarium was surprisingly peaceful when I arrived. Cole immediately ran toward me and hugged me, completely natural and warm. "Ryan, I was waiting for you." I ruffled his hair and smiled. "I wanted to see you too, buddy." Hendrix stood a short distance away, hands in his pockets, observing us with that same guarded expression. But today something was different. He seemed slightly softer. Maybe it was the natural blue lighting, or perhaps his rolled-up sleeves and casual attire made him less intimidating. Cole grabbed my hand and pulled me toward a large glass tank, where colorful fish were swimming. I glanced at Hendrix, silently asking for permission, and he gave a slight nod. The three of us stood there, Cole in the middle, excitedly pointing at the fish while we flanked him on both sides. "Daddy, look at that blue one," Cole demanded. Hendrix hesitated for a second, then slowly placed his hand on Cole's shoulder and pointed at the fish. I helped too, telling Cole facts about the marine life. And in those moments, something strange happened. The three of us felt normal, like a real family. The thought scared me. I looked away and glanced at Hendrix from the side. He was watching Cole with a mixture of pure affection and pain. And I understood. This man loved Cole deeply, but something was emotionally blocking him. Something from his past. "Ryan," Hendrix suddenly looked at me. "Why are you here? Tell me the truth." I was shocked. The question was so direct and raw. I thought about telling the truth, but would he be able to handle it? "Because seeing Cole happy feels good," I said softly. "And I need connection more than money." Hendrix's jaw tightened. He said nothing, but in his eyes, something flickered. A small flash of vulnerability. Then Cole jumped in and said, "Let's get ice cream." And the mood broke. The three of us went to an ice cream parlor. Cole was choosing his favorite chocolate flavor while Hendrix and I stood near the counter. "You're good with him?" Hendrix said quietly, almost unwillingly. I looked at him. This was the first time he'd acknowledged something personal. "Thanks," I whispered. Hendrix turned fully toward me, his voice low. "But remember, Ryan, this is temporary. I don't want to bring you permanently into my or Cole's life." His words stung. But I understood he was protecting himself. Maybe someone had hurt him in the past. I nodded, but my heart felt heavy, because now I was feeling something. Something I didn't want to feel. Cole bounced between us as we walked back toward the aquarium entrance, his small hand alternating between holding mine and his father's. He chattered excitedly about the octopus he'd seen, about how he wanted to learn to scuba dive someday, about a book his teacher had recommended. His joy was infectious, and for brief moments I saw Hendrix's expression soften, really soften as he listened to his son. These were the moments when the walls came down, when the fortress allowed a glimpse of the person trapped inside. I found myself watching Hendrix more than I should have. The way afternoon sunlight caught the sharp angle of his jaw, the way his shoulders relaxed incrementally when Cole laughed, the way his eyes would flicker to me when he thought I wasn't looking, studying me with an intensity that made my skin tingle. When we finally said goodbye in the parking lot, Cole hugged me tightly. "Can we do this again, please?" He looked up at me with those hazel eyes that were impossible to refuse. I glanced at Hendrix, who stood a few feet away, his expression carefully neutral but his body language tense. "We'll see, buddy," I said gently, not wanting to make promises I couldn't keep. But Cole seemed satisfied with that answer. As they walked to Hendrix's car, the sleek black sedan that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years, I noticed something. Hendrix looked back at me, just once. Our eyes met across the distance, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between us. An acknowledgement. A question. Maybe even a beginning. I drove my old, beat-up car back to my apartment. But my mind wasn't on the road. It was on the feeling of Cole's small hand in mine. It was on Hendrix's rare, almost smiles. It was on the sensation of belonging somewhere, even temporarily, even artificially. When I got home, I found another message waiting for me. Not from Hendrix this time, but from an unknown number. "Stop seeing them. You don't belong in their world. This is your only warning." My blood ran cold. I read the message 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Who would send this, and why? My first instinct was to call Hendrix. But I hesitated. We barely knew each other. This arrangement was supposed to be simple, transactional. Getting him involved in what might be just some random prank seemed like overstepping boundaries that were already blurry enough. But as the evening wore on, the message kept bothering me. The tone wasn't playful or joking. It felt threatening, personal. Someone was watching us. Someone knew about the arrangements. And someone didn't want me around. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound outside my window made me jump. Every notification on my phone made my heart race. By 3 a.m. I made a decision. I would tell Hendrix. Not because I was scared, though I was, but because if someone was targeting me, they might target Cole next. And that thought was unbearable. I drafted a message to Hendrix, deleted it, drafted another one, deleted that too. How do you tell someone that you've received a threatening message about spending time with their child? How do you explain that what started as a paid arrangement now felt like something you wanted to protect? Finally, I settled on simple honesty. We need to talk. Something happened. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The message showed as delivered, then read almost immediately. Hendrix was awake too. 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a response came through. My office tomorrow morning. 9 sharp, no questions asked. No demands for explanation. Just immediate action. And somehow that told me everything I needed to know about who Hendrix really was beneath the cold exterior. He was a protector. A father who would move heaven and earth for his son's safety. And maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to see me as someone worth protecting too. The next evening, Hendrix invited me to his home. The message was straightforward. Cole wants to show you his drawings. If you're available. I knew this was meant for Cole. But my heart raced as I stood before the mansion gates. This house, or perhaps calling it a castle would be more accurate, was on an entirely different level. High ceilings, marble floors, and every corner perfectly designed. Yet despite all this grandeur, there was no warmth here. Everything felt cold and empty. Cole opened the door and pulled me inside, clutching a small notebook in his hands. Ryan, look, I drew you. He proudly displayed a page, a stick figure holding a guitar. I smiled, genuinely touched. This is really good, Cole. You're talented. Cole blushed and led me toward the living room where Hendrix was already seated, working on his laptop. He glanced at me and nodded, formal and distant. But there was a flicker in his eyes that I was beginning to recognize. He was noticing me. Sit, Hendrix gestured. I settled onto the couch, while Cole stayed close, continuing to show me his drawings. Hendrix kept working, but I could sense his attention was divided between his screen and us. After a while, Cole fell asleep against my shoulder. I carefully laid him on the sofa and covered him with a blanket. When I straightened up, Hendrix was watching me, intense and unreadable. Coffee? He asked suddenly. I was surprised. This was the first time he'd directly offered me anything. Sure, I replied, following him to the kitchen. The kitchen was as meticulously organized as the rest of the house. Glass counters, high-end appliances. Hendrix silently prepared the coffee, while I stood awkwardly near the counter. You feel out of place here, Hendrix said without turning around, preparing the cups. A little, I admitted. All of this, it's very different from my life. Hendrix looked at me, handing me a cup. What is your life like, Ryan? The question was so unexpected that I was taken aback. When had anyone genuinely asked me that? Simple, I shrugged. I work at a coffee shop, try to afford rent, and basically just survive. Hendrix sipped his coffee, his gaze steady on me. Doesn't all of this, the fake dating, coming to my house, seem strange to you? It does, I answered honestly. But for Cole's sake, it feels worth it. Hendrix's jaw tightened. He set his cup on the counter and moved closer to me. For Cole, only for him. His voice was low, almost challenging. My heart beat faster. I didn't know the answer to that question myself. I don't know, I whispered. Hendrix's expression flickered, frustration, confusion, and something I couldn't identify. You don't understand, Ryan, he said, his voice strained. I don't want you in my life. I don't want anyone. Because I I don't want to hurt someone again. His words were heavy, laden with pain. I understood. Something had happened in his past. Someone had left him, probably Cole's mother. I won't hurt you, I said softly. Not even sure why I said it. Hendrix looked into my eyes, deeply, searchingly, and in that moment the space between us seemed to shrink. I could feel his breath, his closeness. But then he stepped back. You don't understand. He walked back toward the living room, leaving me alone in that cold, perfect kitchen. I stood there, listening to the irregular beating of my heart, realizing that Hendrix wasn't just physically guarded. His emotional walls were so high that I might never be able to cross them. But one thing was clear. I wasn't here just for Cole anymore. I wanted to understand Hendrix too, and that realization was the most terrifying of all. I returned to the living room where Cole still slept peacefully. Hendrix had closed his laptop and was sitting in the dim light, his head resting against the back of the chair. Eyes closed, he looked exhausted, not physically but emotionally. Like someone carrying weights nobody else could see. I sat quietly in the chair across from him, not wanting to disturb whatever fragile peace he'd found. I built this house after she left, Hendrix said suddenly, his eyes still closed. I thought if I created something perfect, something controlled, I could prevent chaos from entering our lives again. But perfection is just another prison. I didn't know what to say. These were the most personal words he'd shared with me. Cole doesn't need perfection, I ventured carefully. He just needs you. The real you. Hendrix's eyes opened and he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What if the real me isn't enough? What if I'm as broken as this house is cold? His vulnerability in that moment was staggering. This powerful CEO, this man who commanded boardrooms and built empires, was admitting to feeling inadequate as a father. You're more than enough, I said firmly. Cole adores you. I can see it in everything he does, every word he speaks about you. Hendrix sat forward, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. She said I was incapable of real emotion, that I chose work over family. That's why she left. And maybe she was right. The pain in his voice cut through me. If she was right, you wouldn't be sitting here worrying about whether you're enough for your son. You wouldn't have agreed to this ridiculous arrangement just to see him smile. You wouldn't be terrified of letting people in because you're afraid of hurting them. Hendrix looked at me sharply. You think you know me after a few meetings? There was defensiveness in his tone, but also something else. Hope, maybe. That someone could see past the walls he'd built. I know what I see, I replied. And I see someone who loves deeply but is scared to show it. Someone who thinks isolation is safety. The silence that followed was different from the awkward pauses we'd had before. This was heavy, loaded with things neither of us knew how to articulate. Finally, Hendrix stood and walked to the window overlooking the garden. My lawyer advised me to end this arrangement. He said it could complicate things if Cole's mother decides to challenge custody. Having an outsider involved, paying someone to spend time with my son, it looks questionable. My stomach dropped. Are you ending it? Hendrix turned to face me. That's what I should do. The logical choice, the safe choice. He paused. But Cole asks about you every day. When can he see Ryan again? What do you think Ryan would like? Can Ryan come to his school art show? His voice softened. And honestly, I find myself wondering the same things. My breath caught. This was as close to an admission as I was likely to get from someone like Hendrix. I don't want to complicate your life, I said. But I also don't want to disappear from Cole's life if I can help it. He's a special kid. Hendrix crossed the room until he stood directly in front of me. It's not just about Cole anymore, is it? His question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I could lie. I could keep this professional. Keep it simple. But something about the vulnerability he'd shown tonight made me want to be honest. No, I admitted. It's not just about Cole. Hendrix's hand reached out, hesitated, then gently touched my shoulder. It was the first deliberate physical contact between us that wasn't a handshake. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to let someone in without destroying everything. Maybe you don't have to know, I suggested. Maybe you just have to try. He studied my face for a long moment, and I could see him weighing risks, calculating outcomes, trying to maintain control over a situation that was rapidly becoming uncontrollable. Then Cole stirred on the couch, mumbling in his sleep, and the moment broke. Hendrix stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place, though not quite as securely as before. "It's late," he said. "I'll call you a car." As I waited for the ride in the grand foyer, Cole having been carried to his bed, Hendrix stood with me in silence. Just before the car arrived, he spoke once more. "Thank you. For tonight. For understanding." I nodded, not trusting my voice. As I rode home through the quiet city streets, I realized that tonight had changed something fundamental between us. The walls were still there, but now I could see the cracks. And more importantly, Hendrix was letting me see them. I thought Hendrix's past would remain a mystery, but one day everything unfolded in the most unexpected way. I was with Cole at an ice cream parlor when he checked his phone. Apparently Hendrix had given him a basic device for emergencies. Suddenly his expression changed completely. "Ryan, look at this," Cole said nervously, turning his screen toward me. There was a message from an unknown number. "Tell your father I'm coming back. He can't hide forever." My heart sank. This was obviously from Cole's mother, but the message was directly threatening and deeply disturbing. "Cole, when did this arrive?" I asked gently, trying to keep my voice calm despite the panic rising inside me. "Just now, a few minutes ago," Cole whispered, fear evident in his eyes. I made an immediate decision. "Come on. We need to tell Hendrix. Right now." We hurried to Hendrix's office. Cole knew the address. When we reached the reception, security initially tried to stop us, but Cole showed his face and they immediately recognized him as the boss's son. We were sent straight to the top floor. Hendrix was in a meeting when we burst in without knocking. He looked shocked and slightly annoyed, but when he saw Cole's frightened face, everything else faded away. "What happened?" Hendrix asked, immediately standing up and ignoring his meeting attendees. I handed him Cole's phone. Hendrix read the message and his entire body tensed. His jaw clenched and an anger appeared in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "Cancel the meeting," he told his assistant sharply. Now, the people quickly left, leaving behind an awkward silence. Hendrix pulled Cole into a tight, protective embrace. "You're safe. I promise you that." Then he looked at me, a mixture of gratitude and frustration in his gaze. "Why did you bring him here? I could have handled this." "Because this is serious," I said firmly. "And Cole was scared. He needed you." Hendrix's expression softened slightly. He sat Cole in his chair and knelt in front of him. "Cole, listen. Your mother, she's confused, but I will never let you meet her if you don't want to." "Understood," Cole nodded, but tears still filled his eyes. "Daddy, will she take me away?" Hendrix's voice cracked. "Never. I will never let you go." I watched Hendrix's vulnerability, raw and unfiltered. This wasn't the powerful CEO. This was a terrified father. Hendrix took a deep breath and called his lawyer, explaining the situation. I sat beside Cole, holding his hand, trying to comfort him. When the call ended, Hendrix looked at both of us, exhausted and defeated. I didn't want you both to see this," Hendrix said quietly. "How messy my life really is." "Hendrix," I said softly, "everyone's life has problems. But you're not alone. I'm here. For Cole. And for you too." Surprise flashed in Hendrix's eyes. He was about to say something, but then Cole interrupted. "Daddy, can Ryan stay with us tonight? I'm scared." Hendrix looked at me, conflicted and vulnerable. "Ryan, you—" "Yes," I interrupted. "I'll stay." And in that moment, our arrangement became something else. Something real, something that bound the three of us together against the storm coming our way. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and tense planning. Hendrix's lawyer arrived at the office, a sharp woman named Patricia who immediately took control of the situation. She interviewed Cole gently about the message, documented everything and began drafting legal responses. I sat in the corner of Hendrix's office, feeling both necessary and intrusive. This was family business, private territory I had no real right to occupy. Yet every time I considered leaving, Cole would look at me with those worried eyes, and I'd stay. As evening approached, Hendrix dismissed Patricia with instructions to file for an emergency restraining order first thing in the morning. When we were finally alone again, the the three of us in that vast office. The weight of the day seemed to settle over us like a heavy blanket. I should explain, Hendrix said, his voice tired. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, the professional armor showing cracks. About Cole's mother, about why this is happening. Cole had fallen asleep in the corner on a small couch, exhausted from the emotional turmoil. Hendrix looked at his son with such tenderness that it made my chest ache. We don't have to talk about this now, I offered. You look exhausted. No, Hendrix said firmly. You deserve to know what you've gotten yourself into. He poured himself a drink from the bar in his office. Just water this time, not alcohol, and leaned against his desk. I met her in college. She was charming, ambitious. Everything I thought I wanted. We got married quickly. Too quickly. I was building my company, working constantly, and she felt neglected. I understand that now. But when Cole was born, instead of bringing us together, it pushed us further apart. His voice grew quieter. She said motherhood felt like a cage, that I'd trapped her in a life she never wanted. One day, she just left, packed her things while I was at work, took nothing of Cole's and disappeared, left a note saying she needed to find herself, that she'd made a mistake. We both deserved better than her resentment. I stayed silent, letting him continue. For 3 years, nothing. No calls, no visits, no support. Cole would ask about her sometimes, and I never knew what to say. How do you tell a child that his mother chose herself over him? The pain in Hendrix's voice was palpable. And now she's back. My investigator found out she's broke. Her new relationship failed. Her business ventures collapsed. And suddenly she remembers she has a son. But I know her. This isn't about Cole. This is about financial security. What does she want? I asked. Money. A settlement. She's threatening to claim I'm an unfit father, that I'm emotionally unavailable, that Cole needs his mother. Her lawyer has already sent demands. And the worst part is, he paused, his face contorted with guilt. Some of it is true, I am emotionally unavailable. I do work too much. I'm not the father Cole deserves. I stood and walked over to him. Stop. Cole is happy, healthy, loved, and secure. That's what matters. You're doing your best, and your best is pretty remarkable. Hendrix looked at me with such intensity that I almost stepped back. Why are you doing this, Ryan? Why do you care so much about us? It was the question I'd been avoiding asking myself. Because Cole reminds me of myself as a kid. Wanting connection, wanting to feel like I mattered, and because I hesitated. Because you're trying so hard to be strong that you've forgotten it's okay to need help sometimes. Something shifted in Hendrix's expression. The walls didn't come down entirely, but they shifted enough for me to see the person behind them more clearly. I don't deserve your kindness. It's not about deserving, I replied. It's about being human. We stood there in the dim office light, the city glowing through the windows behind us. And for the first time I felt like we truly saw each other. Not as employer and employee, not as strangers bound by circumstance, but as two people trying to navigate impossible situations. The moment was broken by Cole stirring on the couch. Hendrix immediately went to him, checking if he was okay. The tenderness in that gesture, the way he tucked the blanket around his son, way his entire demeanor softened, told me everything I needed to know about who Hendrix really was beneath the cold exterior. That night at Hendrix's mansion, Cole slept between us in the guest room, safe and warm. Hendrix and I talked late into the night about his past, his fears, the legal battle ahead. And for the first time, he trusted me completely. He told me how Cole's mother had left exactly 1 year after their wedding, claiming that motherhood and commitment weren't for her, how she'd run off with someone else. And now that her new life had failed, she wanted back in purely for revenge and money. I won't let her near Cole, Hendrix said fiercely. Whatever it takes. I took his hand, silently promising that I was with him. And in that moment the walls Hendrix had built began to crack just a little bit more. The next few days were strangely peaceful. Hendrix had activated his legal team for the restraining order, and I found myself visiting their home almost daily, no longer just for the arrangement, but because I genuinely wanted to. But one night, everything changed. Cole had gone to a friend's house for a sleepover, and Hendrix invited me to dinner, just the two of us. I felt nervous as I arrived at his house. This was the first time we'd been truly alone together, properly, without any distractions. Hendrix had cooked dinner himself, simple pasta and wine. We sat at the dining table with candles softly glowing. "You look nervous," Hendrix said with a slight smile. The first real smile I'd seen on his face. "Because I am," I admitted, laughing nervously. "I never imagined I'd be here with you like this." Hendrix's smile faded, replaced by something intense. "I didn't either. But Ryan, you've changed something for me." His words made my heart race. I sipped my wine, trying to calm myself. "Changed what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Hendrix leaned forward, his gaze locked on mine. "I used to protect myself. I didn't let anyone get close except Cole. But you came in naturally. And now I can't imagine things without you here." My breath caught. This admission was so raw and honest. "Hendrix," I started, but he stood and came closer to me. He knelt in front of my chair, placing his hands on my knees. "I know this is complicated. I know I initially kept you around just for the arrangement. But now I have real feelings for you." Tears welled in my eyes. I felt the same way, deeply, terrifyingly. "Me too," I whispered. "I've become attached to you too." Relief and fear mixed in Hendrix's eyes. He slowly cupped my face in his hands, stroking my cheek with his thumb. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice husky. I nodded, unable to form words. And then his lips were on mine, soft and hesitant at first, then deeper and more desperate. This kiss expressed everything we'd been too afraid to say. When we pulled apart, we were both breathless. "I don't want to hurt you," Hendrix whispered against my lips. "And I won't hurt you either," I promised. We kissed again, this time with more urgency, emotions overflowing. The night progressed naturally. We moved to the living room, entangled on the couch, exploring each other emotionally and physically. Hendrix was surprisingly gentle, constantly checking if I was comfortable. And I was completely, because this wasn't just physical. This was emotional surrender, from both of us. The next morning when I woke up, Hendrix lay beside me, sleeping peacefully. I looked at his face, relaxed, vulnerable, and realized this was the Hendrix the world never got to see. I softly touched his hair and he woke up. His eyes showed confusion first, then realization, then tenderness. "Good morning," he whispered. "Good morning," I smiled back. "Is this real?" Hendrix asked, almost childlike in his vulnerability. "Yes," I said confidently. "This is real." We lay there together, the silence comfortable now. But then Hendrix's phone rang. He answered reluctantly. His expression immediately changed, serious and tense. "What happened?" I asked, concerned. "Cole's mother, she's involved, the media. She's making false allegations that I'm an unfit father and neglecting Cole. She's calling a press conference." My heart sank. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore, it had become a public war. But when Hendrix looked at me, scared yet determined, I knew what we had to do. We would face this together. Because we weren't just a fake arrangement anymore. We were real. And I would protect Hendrix and Cole, no matter what. "We'll win this," I said, taking Hendrix's hand. "The truth will come out. And I'm with you. Every step of the way." Hendrix squeezed my hand back, hope returning to his eyes. "Yes. Together." And in that moment, we decided that no matter what the world said, we would write our own story together, fearlessly. The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon. Hendrix's publicist called in a panic, explaining that Cole's mother had already contacted 3 major news outlets. She was claiming emotional abandonment, that Hendrix had prioritized his business empire over his family, that Cole was being raised by nannies and strangers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was technically a stranger she could point to as evidence. "We need to get ahead of this," Patricia, the lawyer, said during an emergency conference call. "Hendrix, you need to make a statement. Show the public who you really are as a father." But Hendrix looked paralyzed. This was his worst nightmare. His private life, his failures, his vulnerabilities exposed for public consumption. I watched him struggling, saw the panic building behind his carefully maintained composure. "Then let me help," I said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at me. "Let me be there. Not hiding, not as some secret, If she's going to use me as ammunition anyway, let's control the narrative. Hendrix stared at me. Ryan, you don't have to. I want to, I interrupted. Because what we have isn't something to hide or be ashamed of. You're an incredible father. Cole is thriving. And yes, you brought me into his life, through an unconventional arrangement. But look at what it became. Look at what we became. Patricia nodded slowly. He's right. Authenticity is your best weapon here. Show them the truth. That you're a father who loves his son so much that you tried everything, even something unconventional, to bring joy into his life. Hendrix stood and walked to the window, his back to us. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Then he turned around and I saw determination in his eyes. All right, we do this together. But I need Cole kept completely out of the media circus. Whatever happens, he stays protected. That afternoon we stood in front of cameras and reporters. Hendrix in a perfectly tailored suit, me in the best clothes I owned, trying not to look as terrified as I felt. Cole was safely at a friend's house, unaware of the storm swirling around him. Hendrix's statement was simple and honest. He explained that after his divorce, he'd struggled to balance being a single father with running a company. That Cole had taken it upon himself to find someone to help his father smile again. That what had started as an arrangement had evolved into something meaningful. He didn't hide our relationship. He didn't apologize for it. He simply stated the facts with quiet dignity. The questions came fast and sharp. Are you paying him to be in a relationship with you? Is this appropriate given that you're a father? What do you say to allegations that you're an unfit parent? Hendrix handled each one with composure, but I could see the toll it was taking. Finally I spoke up. I'm not here because of money, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I'm here because Cole is an amazing kid who deserved to see his father happy. And because Hendrix is one of the most devoted fathers I've ever met. He didn't abandon his family abandoned him, and he spent every day since trying to be enough for his son. The room went quiet. Then the questions shifted, became less aggressive, more curious. When we finally left the press conference, Hendrix was shaking. In the car away from cameras and judgment, he leaned his head back and closed his eyes. Thank you, he whispered, for standing with me. I took his hand. Always. We didn't know yet how the public would react, what Cole's mother would do next, or what challenges lay ahead. But we knew we would face them together, and somehow that made everything else bearable.